name of the program is Person to Person. Tonight we'll be visiting first with actor Tyrone Power here in New York. And then we'll move on to Warm Springs, Georgia, where the head of the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, Basil O'Connor, and his wife will be waiting for us. We'll be ready to go in exactly 30 seconds.
The name of the sponsor is Life Magazine, which this week brings you its special double issue, actually 2 issues in one, entirely devoted to America's World Abroad. In 120 pages of special articles and exclusive pictures, many in color, Life shows you how 2 million Americans live and work around the globe. Businessmen, nurses, soldiers, students, you'll see them all and learn how they represent America abroad in these crucial times. Life's year-end double issue is on sale now, 35 cents. Now back to Edward R. Murrow.
For almost 125 years, Tyrone Power has been entertaining American audiences. The first Tyrone Power to come to America and the theater was a leading Irish comedian. His son was a concert pianist. His grandson, another Tyrone Power, and his wife toured the country in Shakespearean plays. Their son, Tyrone Power, born in Cincinnati, raised in New York, Hollywood, and a few hundred one-night stands in between, has become well known to millions of Americans by way of the movies, 43 of them in the past 20 years, the most recent being Witness for the Prosecution. He has also played in a number of Broadway hits and toured Europe and much of this country, more recently in classical plays. Except for time out for service in World War II as a Marine Corps pilot, his whole working life has been tied to the stage. Tyrone Power now lives in a 4-room penthouse on top of this building on Park Avenue. He's had it for about 3 years. But most of the time, this home has been loaned to friends, most recently to the Rex Harrisons, as Tyrone Power worked in Hollywood and Europe. Evening, Ty.
Good evening, Ed.
Welcome home and season's greetings.
Thank you, and welcome home to you.
Thank you very much. What were you playing in on your last European tour?
Well, as a matter of fact, Ed, my last European tour was not for work. It was a holiday with Billy Wilder and Charles Lawton.
Well, Ty, in your latest Hollywood movie, Witness for the Prosecution, you star with Marlene Dietrich and Charles Lawton. I know you've worked with Lawton before, but wasn't this your first movie with Miss Dietrich?
Yes, this is my first opportunity to work with Marlene, and I must say I enjoyed it. I've always said that I think anyone who's been in the business as long as I have should never hang up their uniform without once having had the pleasure of working with Marlene Dietrich.
Is she a temperamental actress to work with?
Not at all.
Well, Ty, now that you're back in New York, what's your next project?
Well, at the moment, I'm rehearsing for a new play, the Theater Guild. It's Arnold Moss's new adaptation of Bernard Shaw's Back to Methuselah. And we open in Orlando, Florida on January the 6th and have about a 42-city tour before we come into New York, I believe, sometime around mid-March. We're going to, it'll be quite an extensive tour, mostly one-night stands, although we do have a week here and there.
42 cities.
42.
After all your years in the movies, the theater, doesn't that sort of schedule frighten you a little?
No. As a matter of fact, it doesn't, Ed. Not nearly as much as some things in Hollywood frighten me, but it's really not a bad tour. It's a dream tour, as a matter of fact. We're going to do it mostly by bus and by truck.
Now, tell me, what are the mechanics of a 42-city tour? How does it work?
Well, as I say, if you mean by mechanics, you mean the actual physical movement.
Yes.
It's relatively simple. We have not very much scenery, and the cast is relatively small. And as I say, we travel by bus, and the scenery goes by truck. It makes it very handy because you go right from hotel door to hotel door, and there's very little strain. The one interesting part of it is that we have a limousine with us, which I believe was first designed for use by Miss Emerson and myself, but I think that it will end up that the crew will take the limousine to go on ahead to set up, and we'll come in the bus.
Well, you must really like to travel, do you?
Yes, indeed I do. I think there's a bit of the gypsy still in me.
Well, this must be something of a family tradition. I imagine your father and great-grandfather traveled this land quite a bit, didn't they?
They certainly did. As a matter of fact, the Power family has been traveling for most of its professional life. In here, Ed, I collect
playbills and bits of odd mementos of the family and so on. These are two of the examples. I mean, this is from the Theatre Royal Haymarket in London, and it announces the last 2 nights of Mr. Power prior to his departure for America. And the interesting thing about this is that it's one of the last playbills because he was lost at sea on his way back to England. And this one is dated February 21st, 1837, and it's the Chestnut Street Theatre, I should imagine, in Philadelphia, although it isn't so stated on the bill.
He certainly got around, didn't he?
Yes, he did, and these are letters that I collect. This one happens to be from to a manager of a theater in Pittsburgh stating some difficulties he was going to have in completing his engagement there.
Tell me this, Ty, what did he have to say about the New York area in those days?
Well, when he was here, about 1832, I think, sometime around there, he wrote a book called Impressions of America. It's in 2 volumes and published around 1834. Ed, as a matter of fact, if you'll pardon me for a moment, I don't know how you feel about it, but if it's all right with you, I would like to have a little coffee.
Good, so would I.
Palmetto, would you bring me a little coffee, please? Thank you. But at any rate, to get back to your question about New York, there is one passage in here which says, in the cool of the afternoon, if there chanced to be any cool, it is a common custom for the young men of all classes to drive or ride some 5 or 6 miles along the North Avenue, an excellent road leading to the pretty village of Harlem. And on this line, about sunset, the amateur of horseflesh may see done the fastest pace in the trotting world. Double-horse wagons of the neatest and lightest construction, gigs, sulky, and saddle, all are alike borne along by trotters or pacers at a speed varying from the pair that is doing their mile in 3 minutes to the sulky or saddle nag flying along at the rate of a mile in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. So that's the idea of transportation in New York at this time.
Ty, the other volumes there in the bookcase, are they part of your family history?
These, yes. Oh, they're part of the family history, I suppose, in a manner of speaking. They're scripts of mine of all the motion pictures that I've made that were bound and given to me by a friend many years ago. It dates back to Lloyd's of London and Girls' Dormitory in 1936. And these are the still pictures from the pictures that are also bound. They're not so interesting at the moment, but perhaps my 2 little girls will find them amusing in about 20 years.
Well, Tyrone Power, how does an actor with all your experience just pick up and leave Hollywood and decide to tour in classical dramas? What's the basic appeal in this for you?
Well, for me, Ed, actually, it's a completely personal one. I enjoy the contact with an audience, and I am of the opinion that every actor should at some time or another in his career have this experience. I just happen to like it, and I enjoy doing pictures in the summertime and the theater in the wintertime. It's having your cake and eating it, too.
Ty, why did you decide to do Shaw, and why Methuselah?
Oh, here we are, Palmetto. Come on.
Oh, coffee.
Yes, come right in here, Palmetto. Put it right down here now. Here we are. Now, don't be nervous, Palmetto. We've had guests up here before, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
They might not have been as important as Mr. Murrow, but some of them have been as beautiful, haven't they?
That's right.
Good evening, Palmetto. How are you?
All right, are you, Mr. Murrow?
Tell me, how does Mr. Power like his coffee?
Very, very strong.
Very strong. And if it isn't properly made, does he complain?
No, he isn't a complaining kind of a person. He's very nice.
He isn't a complainer. You've just had the best compliment you have had, Ty, in a long while.
Thank you, Palmetto.
But, Ty, again, the business of Methuselah. Why?
I beg your pardon, Ed?
I say again, why Shaw and why Methuselah?
Well, I had a very pleasant experience last year in England, touring with The Devil's Disciple, and I find Mr. Shaw a very rewarding gentleman with whom to be associated. So I welcome this opportunity again to come along when this particular script presented itself. As far as Back to Methuselah is concerned, I have a feeling that what Mr. Shaw wrote in 1921 when he wrote this play it has such immediacy. There's a certain pertinency to everything that's happening today. Excuse me, I'll take a moment and read you just one of the things that Mr. Shaw has to say.
Good.
He said, "At this very moment, we are waiting with monster cannons trained on every city and seaport and huge aeroplanes ready to spring into the air and drop bombs, every one of which will obliterate a whole city and poison gases that will strike multitudes dead with a breath. At this very moment, one half of Europe, having knocked the other half down, is trying to kick it to death and may succeed." Well, That's what Mr. Shaw had to say in 1921, and if that isn't out of tomorrow morning's headlines, I don't know.
Quite true. Tyrone Power, as you travel through this country and in Europe, have you ever become really conditioned to the lack of anonymity? The business of being recognized wherever you go?
Well, no. When I say no, yes, of course you do. After a certain length of time, you accept it. It's very gratifying in many instances, and while wherever I go, I may not be recognized by the teenagers, I at least am by their mothers.
Ty, when did you start acting professionally?
Well, Ed, I'm in hopes it will be on January 6, 1958 in Orlando, Florida.
All right. Now, let me try it this way. As a youngster, did you ever perform with your parents?
Yes. I appeared with my mother in the Mission play in California. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and then again with my father, I started after schooling at the age of 16 with the Chicago Civic Shakespeare Society.
Ty, that looks like a very busy, or should I say cluttered desk. What all do you have on it, anyway?
I think cluttered is probably the better word, Ed.
All right.
There's a little bit of everything. As a matter of fact, there's some Christmas cards, of course. These are scripts which I'm going to get around to reading soon with a view in mind of probable production with our company, Copa Productions. I don't know, there's the usual address books, date books, certain paraphernalia. There's a few bills over there for the empty.
Tell me, do you spend all of your time rehearsing or touring, or do you ever get time for the outdoor life?
No, I do, naturally. As I say, just like this trip that we recently took with Billy and Charles to Austria. However, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find places in the world that where one can just go and relax. It isn't my problem to go away and be amused or entertained when I have holidays. It's to try to find peace and quiet. And so I think that, although I've never had one up until this time, I'm kind of a mind to get a boat and see if I can get away that way. I think it will be quiet out there, and I love the sea anyway.
Hollywood still hold any great interest for you?
Well, of course it does, Ed, and naturally being the center still of the motion picture world. However, I don't think that for my particular purpose, New York could be bettered, because I find that it's a curious paradox, but many years ago when Hollywood was a 3 or 4 day train journey from here, you went there and you stayed put. You didn't move back and forth as quickly as you do now. Now that the traffic has been facilitated, why, it's a few hours journey, and you can come back, and you have a feeling that you're sort of at the end of the line out there. So I think this is the best. Stay here and go to Hollywood, or go to Europe, or go play here, depending upon the nature of your activity.
You talked a minute ago about getting away from it all on a boat or something like that. Do you sort of deplore this business of rapid transportation and rapid communications?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, it facilitates all my movement.
Tyrone Power, thanks very much for letting us come and visit you tonight. It's been very pleasant.
Well, thank you very much, Ed.
Thanks a lot, Ty.
Merry Christmas.
Good night. Merry Christmas to you. In just a moment.